thank you for being here at this early moment and everything. So it's really good to see the room filled. So yes, we're going to talk about prototyping, game jamming, creating new IP, and figuring out what's the next big thing for your studio. Um, uh, I'm Derk from Paladin. We create games that make you smile. That could be any kind of smile, a sweet twinkle, a loud laugh, or an evil grin. That's the tagline that we have. This is our office in The Hague, in the Netherlands. We're sort of local here, but it's a 40-minute train ride. So this is the team, the Knights of the Round Table. So we're 21 people right now and growing pretty fast. And we make games like this one. Oh, okay, let's fire up the downloader. This one is called Momonga Pinball Adventures. We launched that one 2 years ago on iOS and Android. Currently working on the Wii U build. It's a pinball game with a Japanese dwarf flying squirrel as the lead character, and it's pretty much a wacky action adventure type game with pinball mechanics and owls. Evil owls. And games like this one, which we launched early last year actually, for DNA Japan. It's a mini golf game with also characters rolling up like a ball and action adventure mechanics. So we have this running joke that we're the studio with balls in their games. I don't know if that is really our thing, but we'll see. So this gives you an idea. I wanted to show these games to show you that not everything we do is actually crappy, because the prototypes I'm about to show you are actually really rough around the edges. So we have production quality as well. But let's first start with why jam. Well, you already explained it pretty well, but my take on it is that we're on an epic quest. We want to make a hit game, and the truth is that we really don't know how to do that. We're pretty much like these colleagues of ours, banging coconuts together and trying to figure it out along the way. The thing is that the game design on paper, you don't know whether this is going to be any good. Not saying you shouldn't do documentation, but I don't know if this is going to be a fun game or not. And that's the problem. So we figured, okay, playable builds beat documentation. This is kind of like the agile Scrum philosophy as well. And what we want to achieve there is that we need to start experimenting. And that scientific method is something we use in not only the game jams, but also in our production. And it's the little details, right, that make a lot of the difference in how you do it. You cannot plan and get it right, although I suspect that this is a practical joke on their behalf. And when you play a prototype, it's going to be really in your face obvious whether it's any good or not. I think these examples illustrate quite well what you don't want to have with documentation and figuring it all out on paper. So let's do some crazy experiments. And this is our lab basically, and our crazy scientists. So this is the setting. This is why we jam. All right. So how we do it? Every month, for 2 days, we basically drop everything. Oh, sorry. We drop everything, and we are gonna jam. So the first one is first thing I want to talk about is what are the principles, because you cannot do this without some core foundational principles. What we have, actually for everybody it could be different, right? But our principles are, first of all, freedom. There's no boss telling anybody what to work on. That's actually, Knight of the Round Table is not just my title, but also the philosophy of the company, where we have a round table management structure almost, that's exactly what it is, where everybody has an equal vote and an equal voice. And this is particularly important for jams. So even if you have directors and bosses, I would highly encourage you to let people do their thing, because the crazy ideas, they usually come from the bottom up. So yeah, the second point is that we expect to fail. We've done 12 prototypes, roughly 12 prototypes so far, and most of them didn't really work out. This is just the way it is, and that's fine. We, we want to find that aha moment, or that scientific thing where you can say, that's interesting, right? That's the thing. And if you expect to fail, then it's going to be all right. And I think you'll be better suited to find that part. And as my hero Bob Ross used to say, there are no mistakes, only happy little accidents. Happy little accidents. All right. And the next part is that the jam should be a team effort. So when you have people, I think when you have people working alone on something that they have in their mind, like, okay, I want to work on this, that's cool, but I think it really starts to shine if they are able to convince at least one other person, but maybe two or three, that this is really awesome and you should come work with me on this. So that's one of the few rules we stick to. So the simple steps are basically, first of all, you need to drop everything. For 2 days it's just jamming. This is quite hard, but it's quite important. Of course, there will be calls coming in, and there will be all kinds of stuff coming up. But yeah, this is one of the most difficult things to do. Then pick an idea. The idea is that in advance people start adding ideas to a big list. We use Trello for that, so we create a card for every idea that people have, some pictures there, some explanation of what it is. And at the start of the jam, everybody basically just pitches their favorite idea to the rest. Then if you can convince others that they should join your idea, you form a small team, could be 2 people, 3, 4 people, and then you go build it. So it's quite simple. Then at the end of the jam, we review the results. Together we grab some pizza and some beer or whatever we're gonna order, and then just have some fun. And we usually play some board games afterwards and just relax a little bit and talk about how awesome everything is. So these are the steps. So I've selected 5 games that I'd like to show you, and we'll run through them and share some lessons learned here and there. Again, these games are very rough, so I really want to take a moment to manage your expectations here. This is not going to be anything polished or sparkling. It's actually quite ugly, and that's exactly what it's supposed to be, because we're trying to find the fun and not necessarily polish things. And some of them actually are really nice, but you'll see that, and it depends whether there is an artist in the team or not, actually. So let's first start with Endless Clash. We started this concept as a variation on a earlier prototype, which was Endless Chess. In that game, you had to play chess in like an endless runner type concept. You needed to get as far as possible. We showed that to a couple of publishers, and they said, well, this is interesting, but chess is really niche. It's really something that I don't know if we should be funding this or anything. So somebody came up with the idea, okay, so why don't we just make it a strategy game? I mean, that's more more mainstream, so to speak. So in this game, we took a lot of inspiration from the Clash of Clans type. You have some units, you spawn them, you basically spam the units, and in this game you need to get as far as possible. And there's some. There was no artist on this team, and you can see that the enemies come in, and the better you spam units and make some decisions as to which units you want to build and deploy, the higher your score is going to be. So the first tip here is that by the way, a lot of these tips are basically about how to just hack your way around complicated stuff, right? So one of the difficult things in this game is the formations. You want endless waves of enemies, and you could create a really complicated algorithm to to create these waves. But what we did is we created a whole bunch of prefabs in Unity and just load in a random prefab. So the formations are stored in a prefab. Really rough, really, it's not scalable. I wouldn't recommend it for a real game, but for a game jam, that's a really nice way to do it. Another thing we did was we ported it to smartwatch, which is a crazy idea, and it actually works. So we just published the APK and loaded it up to the Sony smartwatch free, and it worked. But you need to have really small fingers. It's the only problem. And the third tip is that so the last tip was actually see if it works on other platforms. Who knows? Might work out. And this one is that we are now polishing it a little bit to make it more presentable. And we just loaded up some, because we still didn't have an artist on the team because they were busy with other stuff. So we loaded up some, we bought some models from the Unity Asset Store, and that's really a huge advantage because you can very quickly get some nice visuals in your game. So really use the asset store for that. All right. Next one is Move Along. It's a kind of a artsy Lemmings type game where you have to guide the character to the exit of the level. I might want to fast forward this because it's quite slow, but okay. Well, I'll talk about it in the meantime. So it consists of different levels, and you basically have to position some kind of way signs, pointers, and when the walking guys reach the lonely guy, let's call it that, then he starts walking with it. And as you progress through different levels, the crew gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it gets harder to make sure that they don't fall off the cliffs and all that kind of stuff. It's one of those games that you're not gonna think of this top down. There's no marketing dude coming like, hey, we should do this. This is really, I think this is where the game jams are really good in finding that next crazy artsy idea. The starting point for this one was a piece of concept art done by Laurens, our artist, one of our artists, and that really helped in setting the whole vision for the game. And I think that's quite a good tip if you have something to work with, something that you've previously done. If you have a clear vision at the start of the jam, then it makes the rest so much easier. All right, the next one is additive scene loading. It's not a pretty picture here, but what you can see is the menu. And if you work together in a jam, it's really important that you split the scenes up as much as possible, because if everybody works in the same scene, it's not going to be a pretty picture because you have to wait on each other. You don't have the time for that. So simply use additive scene loading to split up the components of the game and make sure that you can work together. And the last one is Mechanim, a great tool to let the artists also get involved in the high-level concept of the game. This is a very, very simple blend tree, but there is an idle, there is a run, and the speed is set, and the programmer can then also tweak the speed based on what's necessary for the game itself. So these are some great ways to work together between artists and programmers as well. Next one is Rotating Home. Sorry, it's a puzzle game. I'll show it. In this puzzle game, you control a creature. It's the blue guy, and you have to guide him to the exit. You tap on either side of the screen to let him walk, and then you swipe to rotate the cubes in the level. And there's the enemy, and you have to avoid him, and you have to kind of be very fast and think and make sure that you actually reach the exit. The exit is right there on the right. For this game, the environment is pretty simple. It's just a Unity scene with some prefabs. The texture is actually interesting. It's quite a simple texture. The artist Jimmy, he used flat shading a little bit to make the UV blending easier. So if you do art, keep it as simple as possible. And there's been quite a bit of iteration as well on the colors, so that the character stands out from the environment. So you can see it there. And for the enemy, we simply reused the same model, change the texture, change the color, and that's it. You know, simple. Another little tip is that we also use separate collider models, so that the artist had the freedom to create some extra fluff here and there, some leaves. You don't want those to show up in your collision model, so the models there were custom modeled. The little detail is that when you rotate a cube, the walls actually retract into the cube. So it's little details like that that actually are quite important to consider as well. And the background environment is just a tileable mirrored texture. So yeah, it's infinite tiling. It doesn't look pretty, but it does the job. Next one is Enemy Panic. It's a 1-versus-1 party game where players control the weird chef guys, soapy chef guys. I don't know what they are. And you have to throw ice creams at each other, and they stick to your body. And those eater things, the yellow things, they will try to eat the ice cream. And if you have more ice cream than the other guy, then they will follow you, and they will try to push you off of the platform. And when you get pushed off of the platform, you lose, basically. Pretty cool idea. This is the environment, very simple. A nice trick that they use is that you saw the enemies, they kind of get on top of each other. It's all chaos. And this is very simple to achieve by just having a spherical collider in the physics yeah, kind of when they push against each other and they get blocked, basically they just get on top of each other, and that's a whole bunch of interesting things happening there. Of course, these guys are pretty much spherical as it is, but the collider is a little bit simpler. The pushing of the platform part is actually harder than it seemed. We wanted to have really good responsive controls, and if you use physics add force to control the main character, that's a little bit sluggish. So we said, okay, let's create a kind of custom quote-unquote physics system where the main character is directly controlled by the player, and the enemies actually have raycasts checking if they push against the player or if they push against each other. And if they push against each other, that gets registered, and it basically the force gets applied. All the forces get applied to the player when they push him. So it's basically just a custom checking how many enemies are pushing and what is the vector for the push. So, and that works pretty well. Next one, I'm going through quite fast. That means that might be some time for questions as well. Mask strategy game. This is a multiplayer game. It's a little bit like Frozen Synapse, where you take turns in presenting or kind of preparing a move, and the enemy does the same thing. And you basically have some seconds to prepare, and then it plays out. So you have to kind of anticipate the enemy's move, and you have to figure out, okay, what is he going to do? Am I going to dodge a bullet, or is he going to, where is he going to walk so that I can shoot at him? So you can see there the left player now targets the red player. You see the arrows moving, they just dodged it, and et cetera, et cetera. So one of the tricks we use, you can see the split screen here. We wanted to make a multiplayer game, but in 2 days to have how do you call it? To have the networking in 2 days, that's not going to work. So we wanted to focus on the gameplay. What we did was a split screen. We basically stretch it across 2 monitors. We put the monitors on, how do you call it? Back to back, thank you. And that works lovely. So that's great, and that works pretty well. Another thing is that we needed to pause the game, so there's a time manager script. We cannot simply set the time scale to 0 because then you don't have any controls anymore. So there's a time manager that basically keeps track of different parts of the game, and you can assign time bubbles to them to figure out if it should be playable or not. So those are the examples. So it's been incredibly valuable to do these game jams, and I highly recommend it that you do them as well. The pitfalls, of course, you need to balance it with regular projects. That can be rough. Means also that the whole team needs to be behind the concept of jamming, including the management, all the stakeholders and everything. And you need to communicate it to your clients as well if you do work for hire. This is quite important and pretty tough to make that decision. Also the selection process. I think what's important there is that everybody can add their own ideas and then basically vote and try to convince each other, make it as bottom-up as possible. And then, of course, when you have those prototypes, it's actually quite important that you have some capacity available to follow up, improve the pitches, show it to the world, and make sure that, that you have something nice to build on. And how to start? Basically, I would say just pick a date. You know, just do it. Start gathering ideas. Set up a platform. Could be an Excel sheet or a document, or I don't know, handwritten notes. Could be anything. Let people gather ideas, and when people start to do that, then you know there's a whole lot of energy coming up from it. Also, you need to set some rules. I think if you set some rules in advance, everybody knows what's expected. Think about things like, do you allow one-person projects? Is there a theme, maybe a platform, an engine, a game type? Is overtime allowed? You know, do you want people to work on it for 48 hours non-stop? Maybe not. Must it be a playable build? Yes or no? It could be a paper prototype. It could be a PowerPoint as well. I think the less rules, the more you'll get out of it. But it's something to experiment with. And yeah, then review the results. Let every game get their 15 minutes of fame, and make sure that that there's a good vibe going on, and just have some fun there. And I would definitely say when it's over, also pick a date for the next one, so it's a cycle. Some tips. Share the results, like I'm doing here. We're not afraid to showcase it to the world. We're showing it to publishers. We're not blogging about it yet, but we'll probably do that as well. We actually considered to set up a Twitch live stream for the development. So it's things like that. You know, it's just a good gives a good vibe. You get a lot of feedback from the industry as well, which is a good thing. Obviously, use an engine. Unity really helps us with speeding up the whole process, and for prototyping it's a really, really good tool. And then it's also, yeah, you don't want to build an engine from scratch, because then your 2 days are over and you have a rendering thing. Yeah, cheat. You know, complex games like the multiplayer thing, just cheat, do something on paper, I don't know, you know, cardboard or whatever it is. And of course use the asset store, because that's a great place to get assets going very quickly. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really good. Actually, an interesting one. I think the Bossa Games guys have a policy where they have a meeting the day before to do the idea generation.
Cool.
And assign teams, because that kind of that takes a lot of the fluff away, so people can focus on the development.
Yeah. Cool.
Have you tried that?
Yeah, we haven't tried that yet, but actually we were also thinking of maybe closing the idea generation, you know, a couple of days in advance, so that people can get together and do that. But
I think
that's a great
sleeping on it as well is also something that's quite an important thing. That you know, when you've got ideas, you actually have time to just let yourself, you know, explore the idea without having to concentrate on it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great idea.
I don't really think we've got that much time left. We've gone over a little bit.
We have a booth 904 at the Idea Showcase. You can play some of the game jams, the prototypes, and I'll be happy to answer any questions there.
great. And thanks for mentioning paper prototyping.
Yeah.
I think we don't talk about that enough either.
Yeah, one of the prototypes was actually a very complicated strategy game, and they said, okay, we're not going to do any coding, we're just going to do a paper prototype. Works brilliantly.
That's great. And when do I get the watch game? Because I really like that.
Yeah, well, you can play it at the booth.
I'll come down there.